Hey, so we've had a great question come through, um, based on one of the teaching sessions I provided on John's Gospel, chapter 1. And the question is a spiritual, supernatural question. Do you think God created demons or created spiritual beings that could choose to love or hate? Or is this just beyond our understanding? And the person goes on to say, I can understand about the pride of Lucifer, and he had his followers in the spiritual realm. I often heard the teaching growing up that angels don't have free will, but I don't think that's biblical. This is a fantastic subject, not just a question, it's a whole subject of debate. And there are people who take both sides of the spectrum, say that angels and demons were created as they are, that they were designed to be what they are. They cannot change, they cannot operate in any other way. It's almost as if they are an automaton, a robot, designed to function as they are, that they can be turned on and off, that they're given assignments, they do the assignment, and then they are dormant until the next assignment or until someone comes and wakes them up. And this is just not God, if you think about it. If that was the way, we would see robots in nature. We would see this kind of autonomative behavior in nature. But we see the complete opposite. And the Bible itself, before we dive into this, answering this question in detail, the Bible itself talks about three different kinds of wisdom. There is a wisdom from above, which we all have to attain to. We all have to desire. It's God's wisdom, the wisdom imparted by His Holy Spirit, His superior, infinite wisdom beyond understanding by our own minds, but by the mind of Christ, we can really grapple with that and understand it. Then there is a wisdom that's earthly, and this wisdom is selfish, it's a human kind of desire, it's also rationalistic, it's logical, it's bound to the physical natural universe, and by this nature you cannot understand the things of heaven. And we'll see that in February's mentoring session as we look through the interaction between Jesus and Nicodemus, as we go deeper into understanding the wisdom of God. But then there is a lower wisdom which is describes not as demonic, which is interesting, but as animalistic. It's based on instinct, as a kind of it lacks that processing, it lacks the emotional intelligence. It's basically an instinctual desire of survival, of myself. It's a selfish, unspiritual wisdom. It lacks anything to do with the fruit of the Holy Spirit. And these are the three wisdoms that the Bible concerns itself with. So if we're going to talk about angels, holy angels, they are from above. So they're going to be operating in that wisdom that's from above. They're not bound and constrained to thinking by the natural physical laws of time and space, or the laws of chaos and decay, or in terms of physics, the kind of laws of quantum mechanics, they're not bound by that. The laws of thermodynamics, they're not bound by that. They're not bound by what we understand. They operate in a spiritual level. They operate in the spiritual realm and have a spiritual understanding, which we are called towards. Now, don't get me wrong, angels don't have infinite wisdom like God. They are not permitted to look into several mysteries, which are actually reserved for us. But they operate on a higher level of wisdom than we could attain in our natural selves. So these angels, it talks about their position in a kind of spiritual level, hierarchy. When it talks about Jesus, it says that God made him a little lower than the angels for a while, but then placed everything under his feet. So we can see there that when Jesus became human with free will, with love, with the capacity of emotional intelligence. He was actually lower than the angels, which suggests that the angels have a higher kind of station in wisdom, in understanding, and intellect. And the Bible actually describes angels and demons as celestial beings, that they are much more powerful than we could ever imagine. And if we begin to say things about them in slanderous ways, then we're foolish. So actually, spiritual beings have a wisdom, they have an intelligence. But it's not the same as God's, and it's not on the same level as God's. And if we get the mind of Christ and we understand the things of God through the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, then that places us also with Christ in the heavenly realms, which is above the angels. And that's why we're allowed to access the mysteries which the angels are not permitted to access. So here we can understand biblically, angels have intelligence, and so do demons. They're not automatons, they are not bound by robotic function, they're not bound by this is what you are, that's all you can do. They have an ability to think. They have an ability to interact with God, interact with us, interact with each other. Take a look at 1 Kings 19, where you have the assembly of God. And this assembly of God, it is spiritual beings. And God basically throws out a question to all the spiritual beings gathered. Who will go out for me? And you can read the chapter yourself. And you see there that this angelic assembly is discussing with one another. They're having intellectual debate. They're making decisions. They're making a choice. And then one steps forward and says, I will go for you. This is a choice. This isn't God saying, you will do it for me. Or I have designed you for this purpose and that's all you can do. God has thrown out the question to all of the host in the assembly, who will go for me? And he waits to see who will volunteer. Now this talks of volition, of free will, of choice in the angelic realm. And so, if we cast back to the beginning, where Lucifer rebelled and became the accuser, the deceiver, Satan, it describes that pride and violence were found in his trade, in his way of being, in his way of life. He was tested and found to be violent and prideful. He started a war against the angels. It says that the devil and his angels. So at this point, when he started the war, his identity had already shifted. He was no longer the bearer of light. He had chosen to step out of that identity that God had designed for him. So get this, God had designed him to be the bearer of light, the guardian cherub seated on Mount Zion. But he chose to step into the deceiver, the thief, the murderer, the liar. And at that point, he became the devil, the accuser. This is now all he is. So he chose to abandon his position that he was given by God by his own free will. And he chose to throw it all away and lose it all to become something limited, which is the deceiver, the accuser of the brethren. And in that moment, he had a war against the Archangel Michael and his angels. Now, this war, he wasn't able to throw a war against God. His peer was an angel. He was a spiritual being. He was pitted against spiritual beings. He could not fight against God. Now, there may be two reasons for that. The first reason may be because he's lower than God. I'd say that's 100% certain. And the other reason is because he knew that if he went up against God, he would be destroyed. As we find out much later in the story of the Bible, in the crucifixion of Christ, the devil was disarmed. And later on in the book of Revelation, he is destroyed completely. So the angels, they understand their position. They have a choice, they have free will. but their identity can be affected by their choices. So what I mean by that is if they make the wrong choice, and they're tested and weighed and found not able to remain in heaven, it says that there was no place to be found, no place remaining for the devil and his angels, and so they were cast out. And Jesus said he saw him fall from heaven like lightning. So basically, I think, based on all of this, that God created spiritual beings with free will, the ability to choose, the intellect to discuss the will of God, the intelligence to be able to enact it in a wise way and according to wisdom. And I believe that they have the capacity to love or hate. It says that when Satan was cast down to earth, he saw what had happened, and he waged war against the church, against God's people. Fueled with hatred, fueled with bitterness. That was his now state. He was in a bitter state. He still is. He has no love. He does not love truth. As we see in February's mentoring session, that actually those who choose to remain in darkness do not love God, do not love the light. So you can see that Satan and the angels that followed him, that the demonic realm, all the beings in that realm, do not love, which suggests that they once could love, but now they do not love. They cannot come into the light because they hate the light and they love the darkness. This is what it says in John's Gospel. And so you see, this describes that spiritual beings, angels and demons, can have the capacity to love and hate. So it's easy to draw these conclusions in the Bible, but I encourage you to go and seek these things out for yourself in the scriptures. Pour out the scriptures, study them, go deep into these mysteries of God, and you'll find that the angelic realm and the demonic realm is much more vast than we realize. It also talks about angels having palaces and sanctuaries in the heavenly realm. They have a vast array of function. They have a vast array of living conditions, of places they can be. And the Bible talks about heavenly realms, not just one, where these spiritual beings live and move and have their being. It's in these realms they have decisions. They make decisions. They also study the things of God. They are supremely intelligent. Some of the angels are described as watchers. They watch, they record, they do things according to God's will. But in the book of Revelation, the 4 angels who we are aware of them as horsemen, they're actually angels. Horseman is a kind of tier or subset of angels. They're basically militant, operational. They have a great authority, and they're sent out to do things, specific things. So these 4 horsemen are given things to do, and then they're told, but don't do it yet. And then we see later on in the book of Revelation that there are the 4 corners of the earth holding back the winds, that destruction may not come upon the earth. So they are given free will, but they're given an instruction, don't do it yet. So they had a choice. What are they going to do? Well, we see they actually fall in line with God's will. And so they operate in that way, but they're given instructions. If they were robots, if they were automatons, designed to behave in certain ways without choice, they wouldn't need instruction. They just receive and do, receive and do, receive and do. But they're in dialogue with God. They're in dialogue with their peers and their leaders above them. And angels have a loyal following. So Michael has his angels beneath him. There's a whole following there, and you can see that mimicked in the demonic realm with Legion. Legion was a whole gathering of demons. They were loyal, and you can do a Bible study and realize there's something deeper going on there with a hierarchy. And so we have this mirrored really in both the angelic realm and the demonic realm of loyalty, of this idea of I belong to a leader, I'm loyal to the leader, and they're ultimately loyal to the top chief. So under the angelic realm, it's God, Jesus. Under the demonic realm, it's Satan. They have no God above them. And so what we have here is free will, the capacity for love and hate, emotional capacity, loyalty, but they choose to be loyal. And they have supreme power. Let's not forget that. These are celestial beings that we're talking about. They are higher than us in our current state. Spiritually, we've been seated with Christ, which means we're above them, and one day we'll get to judge these beings. Now, judging these beings itself suggests that we'll be looking at their deeds, their actions, what they have done, and the fruit of their works, and then we'll be making a just decision over reward for these angels, the holy angels. So that suggests that they had, or do have currently, choices to make with what God asks them to do. And their reward will come as a result of how that all worked out. So let's not forget that one day we will judge these beings. Let's hold them in reverence now for the rightful place they have. But also let's remember that God will one day enable us to have that seating in the heavenly realm and judge these beings. And it's probably an ongoing judging, an ongoing, not in terms of condemnation, but in terms of, let's look at what you were asked to do, let's look at how it worked out, kind of like an appraisal. What rewards are they due? And this will probably go on. I mean, make up your own mind about it, but I do believe it will go on throughout time. And that's the position that God will elevate us to, which is, it's kind of the reverse of how it was at the beginning, with the angels seated on Mount Zion, the guardian cherub over all of the earth. But in that time and space, in that era, that period of time, Adam and Eve had not yet come out of the Garden of Eden. Had they come out of the Garden of Eden and subdued all the earth, now remember, all the earth is probably the physical realm and the supernatural spiritual realms tied to the earth. They would have probably come into what God designed us to be, which is one with him, seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. It would have been via a different way, not the crucifixion, because Adam and Eve, if they didn't sin, there would be no need for it. But the angels probably saw that, the ones who rebelled, Satan and his demons, and probably that was a factor in what was going on. Pride. How dare these humans one day sit over me and judge me? I'm an angel, I'm a celestial being. They're just dust of the earth. What are they compared to me? Is probably something along the lines of what he was thinking. I mean, the Bible isn't clear on that, so don't jump to theological conclusions, but you can see how easy it is to see how things unraveled and why there was a rebellion. So in short, I think God created angels. All demons were angels to begin with. They were spiritual beings that had freedom of choice, capacity to love and hate. And the Satan and his demons, they hated the light. They did not love God. They loved the darkness. And so out of the light they were cast. But the angels love God. The angels love God's people. They choose to obey God. They choose to submit to him out of loyalty to him and serve us, communicating with each other, discussing God's will with each other, seeking out understanding God, watching all of humanity, seeing how they can serve humanity, writing down what happens on a daily, on a moment-by-moment basis, recording it. The class of watchers record it. And there are other classes of angels too. But I hope this has given you a taste of some of the mysteries of the spiritual realm. Keep the questions coming in. I love your questions. They're fantastic. They help us to go deeper and unpack the spiritual mysteries. And remember, there is another mentoring session the first Wednesday in February. We're going to go really deep into light and darkness in the spiritual realms, where these kind of questions, they're kind of coming key into that to help us understand the mystery of spirit, the mystery of light and dark, and the higher wisdom that is available to us in Jesus Christ. So may you have a blessed January, the rest of January, and just keep going deeper with God, keep enjoying His presence, keep enjoying the mysteries of the spiritual realm that are available to you. And I look forward to seeing you on the first Wednesday in February. If you like this video and would like more mentoring or teaching materials on the biblical perspective of these spiritual gifts, why don't you join me on my Patreon? It's www.patreon.com/Christian Seer. If you like this video, please give me a like below, subscribe and follow, and leave a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions, any thoughts. I love to hear from you, and I look forward to you joining me for the next video, which will be coming soon.